So continuing with System Build September, this week we're taking a look at what I could only describe as a POS. I bought this point of sale machine from eBay last month. The machine itself cost me about £20, and then when I seen the matching monitor for only a tenner, I had to pick that up too. But what do you get? Well, putting this to the side for now because, well, this LCD monitor is a POS. The machine itself is pretty basic, as you would expect for a system like this. We have a little drop down door here revealing a floppy drive and what you might think is the power switch, but no, that actually activates the onboard diagnostics. More on that later. LED indicators and what looks like space for a laptop style CD drive, but as you'll see when we get inside, there is nowhere to mount anything. The back of the machine is where things start to get slightly more interesting though. This is our power input, and these three here I really have no idea. Most likely something to do with this machine's intended purpose and its point of sale. Possibly for a cash register, something like that. We have onboard Ethernet, parallel, onboard VGA, 4 serial ports, 2 USBs and our PS2. What's so interesting about that, I hear you say? Well, this is the bit that I thought was interesting. We have space for 3 expansion cards. And when we open up the system, you can see that those 3 expansion slots are 2 PCI and 2 ISA. Well, the middle one is shared PCI or ISA, but that gives us plenty of upgrade options for this little machine. We can stick a better graphics card in here, say, and a nice Sound Blaster compatible DOS sound card in here. Then we have ourselves one very nice little compact retro gaming machine. And then while we're in here, let's just tear down the rest of this and give you a better look at what's in it. Just one screw holding in the IDE hard drive and floppy drive. Nothing special to report here. I think the IDE drive is about 10 gigabytes. I don't think I've ever seen a floppy or IDE ribbon cable like this before, with every single core of the cable separated like that. I can only assume they've done that to try and save space, to make it easier to scrunch these cables together. This little board here is what gives us our power readout, and it also has that switch for entering the diagnostic mode. This here would appear to be our power supply, but only partly. There are a few fuses on here that would remind you of something you might see in your car, but the actual power supply itself is this unit here, which is more or less just your typical ATX power supply. You know, it even has the mounting holes for your typical supply. This just sits external to the machine. Connects to the back using this proprietary connector here. That goes in there. And I suppose the thinking of an external power supply is to keep the footprint of the PC itself to a minimum. Then if you consider failures, one of the most common items would be the power supply. So it's easier for a retailer just to replace that one part himself rather than having to open up the machine. So there's not a lot else to see on this side. Let's flip things over. The underside of the board then is when things start to get a little more interesting. This has written on it here, water cooling heat pipe. I would say it is incredibly unlikely that there's any water in here. Rather, it just looks like your typical copper heat pipe, but who knows. Our processor sits underneath here. Heat pipe runs along to here, where there is a bit of a heatsink and then a fan on the other side that blows through it. We have one memory module, laptop style, PC 133, 256 megabytes. Now, how do we go about getting this off? So this would appear to be screwed down from this point here and here. Let's take these out. A couple of screws in the back here. There we are. Lots of dust, and as I suspected, this is your typical heat pipe arrangement. The processor is in this socket here, but I'm not 100% sure, if I'm honest, how to get that out. So let me just show you. What we have here is an AMD K6-2 processor clocked at 533 megahertz, which is strange because I could have swore the last time I powered this thing up, it was only running at 450 megahertz. So I wonder if this jumper block here maybe sets the clock speed somehow, or sets the multiplier. Obviously the front side bus is 100 megahertz, but yeah, that might be something to try and look into. So the chipset then is an SIS 5595, and then the only other thing of interest is this M Systems Disk on Chip. This is our little onboard diagnostic system. So what are we going to do with this machine? Well, we have these expansion slots here, so we may as well make the best use of them. Now the obvious choice for putting in here with the PCI slot would be a Voodoo 2, but I'm not made of money, and Voodoo 2s command upwards of £100 these days. So instead of that, what I've decided to go with is this. This would just be a completely replacement graphics card. This is an ATI Radeon 7000, 64 megabytes of DDR, and it's on the PCI bus. Not the most powerful card out there, but it should be well matched to our CPU. For sound then, I've decided to go with this Aztec sound card, ISA, and as I said, that'll plug in quite nicely either there or in the bottom. We shouldn't need any other expansions because we do have the onboard LAN. Now, one problem that I am going to have here is finding drivers for the onboard peripherals, if in fact they're not already included in the likes of Windows 98. I have been hunting the internet for drivers or details or manual or anything for this machine and can find very little. The company that made this, POS, do still seem to be in operation, so it might be worth reaching out to them, but considering the age of this, I would think it rather unlikely they still have any technical literature. By the way, this here, which looks like it could be used for a CD drive, this door here as such is removable, but as you can see there's nowhere here to mount a CD drive, and if you can make that out down in there, there is certainly nowhere in there to mount it either. Oh, the only other thing to mention, by the way, is that there appears to be onboard SCSI as well, albeit no SCSI peripherals inside the machine. Right, first things first, everything needs a really good clean because it's absolutely stinking. So I'll do all that, then we'll reassemble it just as it is, stock, without any of our expansion cards yet, and we'll power it up and take a quick look at those onboard diagnostics. Okay, let's power it up. For a system designed for a retail environment, point of sale system as it is, it's certainly noisy enough. This fan here is quite noisy, as is the one in the power supply itself. And would you look at that, K6-2 450. So yes, I was right. The processor in this is being seen as 450 megahertz, but as we've seen written on the chip itself, it is the 533 megahertz version. So I wonder if that little jumper block just beside the processor has anything to do with the multipliers. Maybe we could get this system up to 533 megahertz. There we are, in the BIOS. So as we thought, we do have 10 gigabyte hard drive and our 1.44 megabyte floppy drive. Quite a lot of BIOS features. So our onboard VGA is sharing 4 megabytes of the system memory. When we stick in our new graphics card, well, we would be wanting to set that, but it already is set to look for PCI slot first for a display device, whereas the onboard chip is presumably AGP. We can turn that up to 8 megabytes shared, but to be honest with you, I think regardless we'll be better off with the PCI graphics card. Right, anyway. So the hard drive of this machine was wiped and the seller just put on a copy of FreeDOS, but we're probably going to load up our own copy of Windows 98. But just before we do that, let's power off the machine. And this button here, which activates the diagnostic mode, push that in and power up again. The system will now boot to that disk on chip. This is obviously running some form of MS-DOS and then this little program on top of it. This is obviously designed to test your point of sale peripherals. So it's looking for serial devices, of which we have none attached. So there's not a whole lot we can do here because we don't have a barcode scanner, we don't have a magnetic strip reader. All we can really do is test the keyboard. And I find it interesting that they didn't bother laying out the keys there in your QWERTY keyboard layout. Rather, it's just F1 to F10, 0 to 9, then A to Z. Right, so as I say, there's nothing else we can do here. All we can really do is exit the program, and that just resets the machine. So I've tried everything I can think of to get out of that test program just back to MS-DOS. I'd love to know just how big this disk on chip is. It'd be really cool if we could just load up MS-DOS from that, boot instantly, and then maybe even try and access the hard drive separately from that, but we can't. I can't see this disk on chip from within FreeDOS that is currently installed on the hard drive, and I seriously doubt when we get Windows 98 on here if we will be able to see anything at all. Right, next thing to do is I'm going to stick our expansion cards in, power up again just to make sure the system is booting. Then we're going to need to try and hook up a CD drive somehow, probably just on the IDE here. I'll put on a different cable with master and slave on it, and just set a CD drive here for the meantime. That will let us get Windows 98 installed, then we can have a go at testing this wee machine out, run a couple of benchmarks and maybe a few games. Just in the middle of installing Windows 98 here, so all I did was hook up a spare DVD drive that I had just sitting on the side here, and I'm running power to it separately. There only is one 4-pin Molex connector off this power supply for this hard drive. I dare say it would have been fine splitting that to power the CD drive, but I didn't want to take any chances, so just powering it separately. And no, that's not some funny effect caused by the camera on that monitor. Those two vertical bars are visible to me as well, so it seems our little POS monitor is living up to its POS name. So I finally have our little point of sale system set up. It was not without problems though. This is our 256 megabytes of RAM that was in here originally. Unfortunately, this failed. No idea why, but just came out to the machine today and nothing, would not post. Turns out this has went bad. The only other replacement RAM chip I had was just 128 megabytes, but still, that's plenty for Windows 98. I know I said it before, but considering this machine is meant for a retail environment, it certainly does make a lot of noise. Right, so what have I done? Well, I've disabled the onboard serial ports, all 4 of them, and the parallel port because I'll not be using it. One thing I can't do though is disable the onboard graphics adapter. And I can't find any chip on the motherboard that would give me some idea of what that is to get the proper drivers installed. So it'll just have to stay like this. But anyway, what can we do? Well, we've got 3D Mark 2000 to try, and then we've got an OpenGL game, Quake 3 Arena, and then a DirectX game, Unreal Tournament. Let's start with the benchmark. So not that impressive straight off the bat. 11 frames per second, 10 frames per second. Oh dear. I knew that Radeon 7000 wasn't the fastest card out there, but I did expect it to do better than this. That was nothing short of painful. 648 3D marks. Quite a bit lower than I was expecting. Right, I don't see any point in trying Unreal Tournament or Quake 3 Arena. Instead, what I'm going to do is go away and do a bit of homework on this computer to see if I can't figure out how to get some more performance out of it. So, with thanks to the guys over on the Retro PC Gaming Facebook group, and in particular Ian, thank you very much, because he got me the manual for this board. And that told us that this jumper block here, isn't it just as well I didn't start messing with things, because this jumper block here, the first 5 of these control the core voltage of the processor, so messing with this, I very well might have killed it. The last 3 set the multiplier, which is currently set to 5. And then this jumper here sets the front side bus speed. It was originally set to 90 megahertz, so 90 times multiplier 5 give us our original clock of 450. But I've now cranked that up as far as it'll go. So we're now sitting at 112 megahertz front side bus, for which the memory is also clocked at that speed. And that has given us a new CPU clock of 560 megahertz. Now I have tested it quite a bit at that speed and it does seem quite happy. And that extra speed on the processor and the bus has given us quite the performance boost. So our frame counter here in 3D Mark is definitely well up from where it was before, edging into the 20s there. And as you can see, our 3D Marks are just knocking on the door of 900. Quite a bit up from where it was originally. So our system is a fair bit faster, but it is still struggling to play games such as Quake 3 Arena or Unreal Tournament. The likes of GL Quake and Duke 3D though, they absolutely fly along on this wee machine.
Damn, those alien bastards are gonna pay for shooting up my ride.
So we're playing this here at 800 by 600. That's its highest native graphical settings anyway. And as you can see, it is running really well.
Damn, I'm looking good.
Not looking too bad, Duke. But what about GL Quake? Running absolutely perfectly. So this is just its standard out of the box settings. So it's only 640 by 480 and 16-bit colors. I dare say we could crank the resolution up a bit, but with GL Quake, you don't really need to. I think it looks fine like this. Right, so to finish off today, I'm sure you are wondering just how does it actually run the likes of Unreal Tournament. So let's show you. So we're just running the game at 800 by 600, 16-bit colors and medium texture and skin details. And we'll just start a quick practice session. And of course it has to be Deck 16. So the game does run okay. It does drop the odd frame every now and then. And obviously if you crank those details up any further, well, it can very quickly become a bit of a slideshow. Where is everybody? Right, that'll do. So there we have it, our little DigiPOS point of sale retail computer is finished. Well, that's all I want to do to it anyway. We've managed to get that core clock speed up quite a bit. System performance is not bad. I dare say if we wanted to do any better, we would need to look for a better graphics card that ATI Radeon 7000 isn't that good, to be honest. Only has a 64-bit memory bus, so it's left a bit wanting. It might be useful to look into mounting a CD drive here. The only difficulty is I would need to come up with some sort of custom bracket arrangement to hold it in place. In the meantime though, all I'm doing for CDs is mounting ISOs under Daemon tools. That's easy enough. That's how we used to do it back in the day, so why not, eh? I managed to get the wee issue with the monitor sorted out. If you remember, it was showing sort of vertical bars on it. That seemed to just be an issue with refresh rates. But we're there now. It's displaying a stable image, albeit it is a bit washed out, and the viewing angle is not what you'd call great. Well, that's it then. Hopefully you enjoyed this wee video. If you did, I would appreciate a thumbs up, as it does help the channel, helps with those YouTube algorithms. And the question is, just what am I going to do with a point of sale come retro gaming computer? I don't really know. I'll play some Quake 3 Arena and try and make up my mind.